Hey guys, we're ready for Genesis chapter 5. Let's read through it and then we'll see what we can get out of it. Okay. This is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day that God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female, and blessed them, and called them mankind on the day they were created. And Adam lived 130 years, and begot a son in his own likeness, after his image, and named him Seth. After he begot Seth, the days of Adam were 800 years, and he had sons and daughters. So all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. Seth lived 105 years, and begot Enosh. After he begot Enosh, Seth lived 807 years, and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. Enosh lived 90 years and begot Canaan. After he begot Canaan, Enosh lived 815 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Enosh were 905 years, and he died. Canaan lived 70 years and begot Mahalalel. After he begot Mahalalel, Canaan lived 840 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died. Mahalalel lived 65 years and begot Jared. After he begot Jared, Mahalalel lived 830 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years, and he died. Jared lived 162 years and begot Enoch. After he begot Enoch, Jared lived 800 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah. After he begot Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Methuselah lived 187 years and begot Lamech. After he begot Lamech, Methuselah lived 782 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. Lamech lived 182 years and had a son, and he called his name Noah, saying, "This one will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord has cursed." After he begot Noah, Lamech lived 595 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So this is one of those chapters that we love to read because it's a bunch of chronology. It's tempting to skip through this stuff. So there's not. It's hard to take a lot away. One of my favorite applications of this stuff is it does give very specific ages. So we've got actually from Adam to his son 130 years, and then Seth was 105 years. Enosh lived 90 years. This is how old these men were before they had this next generation, and you can add up all of these gaps and you can get a real record, which is crazy that they have this stuff, but you can add this up and it amounts to about 1,656 years from the time Adam is born or created until the flood comes. And what's awesome is as you go through scripture, it continues to give this detailed account. So this tells me two things. It tells me, one, that Genesis is not just a metaphor. It is meant to be taken as a record. And then once you believe that record, it's just fun. It's there. You can get a very precise idea of how long it took. And I don't see any reason to be completely thrown off by the ages here. This is pre-flood. So this is a completely different environment. These are, as we're going to read in the next chapter, there were men of renown in this time, and there's all kinds of theories about Nephilim and what all that entails. But this was a different kind of life. all we know is post-flood. So we're like, well, people don't live that long. But we have absolutely no idea what the condition was like before the flood. So why not live 900 years? That's not unusual if we don't know the context. So, yeah, this is helpful chronologically to figure out a very specific age of the earth. There's an account of history here that we're at least being given a gap. It gives us a genealogical tracking so that we can get from Noah all the way in a bloodline to Adam, which genealogy was very carefully kept track of all the way through. But as we kind of touched on in Genesis 4, this is not the only genealogical record we have. We've got another genealogical record that is from Cain. And Cain has kind of a weirdly similar genealogy. So let's look. Cain had Enoch, who had Irad, who had Mehujael, who had Methushael, who had Lamech, and then Lamech had 4 kids that are mentioned: Jabal, Jubal, Tubal-Cain, and Nama. Okay, now let's run through Seth's again. Seth had Enosh, who had Canaan, who had Mahalalel, who had Jared, who had Enoch, who had Methuselah, who had Lamech, who had Noah. There's a lot of names in here that are similar, if not completely identical, and there is a theory that bounces around that, oh, well, these are the same guys. And that sounds like it might be logical, but I really don't think it holds much water, partially because the names are not in the same order. So yes, Cain has an Enoch, and then in Seth's lineage there is an Enoch, but that Enoch is from Seth. It goes Enosh, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, and then Enoch. And Enoch is about 6 generations down, where Cain had a son named Enoch right off the bat. He built a city for his son, Enoch. And the word Irad and the word Jared, I's and J's can be very, not interchangeable per se, but it's very easy to swap them in a lot of languages, and Hebrew is no exception to that. So Irad, Jared, same guy? I don't think so, because Enoch has a son named Irad in Cain's lineage, whereas in Seth's lineage, Jared is the father of Enoch. So that's all flipped around. There's talk of this Methushael and Methuselah being the same guy. Again, I don't see it, because in Cain's lineage, Enoch had Irad, who had Mehujael, who had Methushael. There's 3 generations gap there, where we know that Enoch was only 65 years old when he had Methuselah. There's not 3 generations squeezed in there. So I don't think Methushael and Methuselah were the same guy. So why are these names so similar? Is it coincidental? I don't think it's coincidence as much as it's just practical. Just as people nowadays would name someone after members of their family. You might be named after your grandpa or your uncle or your cousin, just to honor somebody that you know. I don't see any reason this couldn't have been very similar. So again, at this point, there's not a lot of people on the earth. They are populating to some degree, but why not use names that have been used before? And sometimes they're not the same name. So Methushael and Methuselah are almost the same thing, but they're not. And I didn't dig into the Hebrew, but these could mean almost the same thing. It could be an altered message if something significant has happened in history or something has come to fruition. But in any case, I think we need to treat these like they were all individual people, probably built off of each other's reputations, but I don't think that any of these names were borrowed. And then we get to Lamech. And Lamech is interesting because Nama, who we've talked about in Genesis 4 as being possibly the wife of Noah, Nama's father is Lamech, and then Noah's father is Lamech. And so it would be really easy to go, well, shoot, did Lamech just have Nama and Noah? Is he the father of both of them, and then they just got together as the husband and wife? Well, Abraham and Sarah were half brother and sister. So at this point in history, it's not that that would be an awful thing, but I don't know that it's the same Lamech. And the only argument I can give for that, I like it because it almost gives a reason for the random story that we get of the first Lamech. If we remember, the first Lamech had this really weird and almost arrogant story where he killed a man, and then he said if Cain was avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold, and basically says this is how it is. And then there's a little story about Lamech, Noah's father, and he's the one who prophesies, and he says over Noah, this one will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord has cursed. He begot Noah. He lived 777 years, and then he dies, incidentally, the year before the flood. He doesn't die from the flood, which I think is significant. He's not punished. He actually does not survive to see the flood, so he's not wiped out. But the 777 years, whether you want to call that significant or not, to me, it gives him a sense of wholeness, a sense of completion. I think Lamech was a good man. Lamech, the father of Nama, does not give that impression. I don't see Lamech, the father of Nama, as being a real great guy based on what was said in the last chapter. And I think that contrast is meant to be there, possibly on purpose, so that we get this idea that there was a Lamech of Nama and a Lamech of Noah. And I don't know if there's meant to be a contrast there, or if those details are just put there so that we don't confuse these two Lamechs, that they are different kinds of people. The only thing I really want to add now is Enoch. Enoch didn't die, did he? He says he walked with God for 300 years, and then he was not, for the Lord took him. It's weird language, and we're in New King James, so some language is weird, but traditionally it is accepted very strongly that Enoch did not die. And I want to go further than that. There is a book of Enoch. It does not make it into our scripture, and people have different opinions on how much weight that does carry. Can we trust something that was written that long ago? And wait, I thought we said that Moses was the one who began scripture, that they had no scripture up to this point until Moses was given Genesis dictated. There is a tradition that there was a book passed on, and it was from Enoch. And it's not so far-fetched, although it's not really talked about a whole lot, especially in Protestant circles, but he is referenced. The longest reference that we have, and the easiest one to pick out, is actually from Jude. And Jude actually accredits Enoch specifically as being the author. Jude is just one chapter. So Jude verses 14 and 15 says, now Enoch, the seventh from Adam, so we know who we're talking about. It's definitely this Enoch. He prophesied about these men also, and we'd have to go back and look at those men. Basically, these are men who are just very, very stubbornly, blatantly going against what God says. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment on all, to convict all who are ungodly among them of their ungodly deeds, which they've committed in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Now, obviously, Enoch is pre-flood, so he is probably giving a dual message. He's giving a message to the evil that's going on in Noah's day, but he's also referenced as a prophet. He's seen as a prophet. So, like a lot of prophets, he has a message for that time, but then hindsight, it's recognized as a prophecy that could possibly have an alternative meaning for later on in time. But the whole point of this, Jude, the brother of Jesus, had the book of Enoch. He had access somehow to the writings of Enoch. And not only did he have those writings, but he used them as an authority to help push his point along. So Enoch was not just a far-fetched idea. And there are other references through the gospel that are not specifically said, Enoch said this, but there are lots of quotes from the book of Enoch. If you happen to read it, there are several passages where it's like, oh, actually, that's in the Gospels, or that's referenced by other New Testament authors. He was a well-known author. So, part of the reason I mentioned that, chapter 6 gets interesting, and Enoch makes it more interesting. So I don't know how much we'll dive into what the book of Enoch says, but yeah, we're about to get into the world of Nephilim, of men of renown, of genealogy, and what God actually meant when he said that Noah was perfect in his generations. Did it mean that there was some kind of genealogical perversion and that Noah somehow got out of that? Or did it just mean that he was a good man? We'll touch on that later. For now, just enjoy the detailed historicity that comes from chapter 5 and the fact that we can mathematically map exactly what God is doing. We are crazy for having this much detail when the world considers the beginning to be clouded in mystery. We've got a faith that says this is how God did it on this day, this day, this day, this day, and this is what was said in the very first day of the world, and this is how old the first person was when he had the second person, who had the third person. There is no vagueness. There is no mystery as far as all that goes. It seems to be just as simple of information as when we get into actual human world history. So, if we have faith to believe it for what it says, it's actually pretty cool that we know this kind of stuff from this early on. So, okay, this is about to come to our flood. So, guys, thank you for listening, and see you next time.